Well, thank you for attending tonight. We are on week 2 of our Pathways demonstration sessions. So tonight's session is by David Storey. He's our Division C director. He's got a fantastic background. He's also just a wonderful Pathways person. He's taken to it like a fish to water. And he's also one of our Zoom specialists now, since we moved on to Zoom and online processing here. So tonight's session, David is doing accessing your first project, but
That is correct.
It's really just a chance to see how Pathways works. And if you guys have any questions, this is the greatest time to ask him, because once the session's over, he can move to anything and talk about anything Pathways. He's just a fantastic expert at that. So take it away, David.
All right, thank you, Lloyd. Well, welcome everyone. I hope that we continue this and have more people coming out for future should I say the future series of Pathways as we go along to different portions of it. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that everybody can see what I'm doing in Pathways. All right, so if you notice, once you log on to Pathways or log on to Toastmasters International, it says welcome and your name. TI has actually done something very nice. The old original method of getting in was to go to Pathways and you'd end up clicking through about 5 or 6 different screens to get to where you want to be. Now, you just click on welcome and your name and it comes up to here. And if you notice down here, you can go, I'm enrolled in 3 paths and I can go right to my transcript, right by here. And what this does is it brings me up to the list of available items that I have open within Pathways. And I just pull down and I've got engaging humor, which is in progress. Innovative planning, which I just picked up tonight. I'm registered. I haven't even gone into it tonight. When you pick up your first path, that's what it's going to say. You're registered in your path, but you have no progress, so it doesn't say in progress. So what you would do if this was your very first path is you would simply, on the other side, and I have to move all of the pictures away here so I could see it, you would go to Open Curriculum, and this is what you would see. You would see your level 1 projects, and you could tell it's level 1 because you look over here, and it's highlighted on the left-hand side where the bubble is on the right. It says level 1. And of course, the very first is the icebreaker. Originally, you couldn't see anything but the icebreaker when you first started Pathways before they made changes. Now, within Pathways, when you get here, you can actually go into level 2, level 3, level 4, whichever level you choose. And you notice they all say activate because they've lifted the requirement to do the icebreaker first and then complete level 1 before level 2 and then level 3. Does that make sense? Now you can go anywhere you want. Similar to the traditional method where we had manuals, you can pick up your CC manual and start with Project 8 if you wanted to. Similar type of concept, except electronically. So in order to see what's inside your project, you must activate it. So I'm going to activate my project. And if you notice, its status is registered and the others say not activated. I haven't even gone into them. And now I can launch it. And this is as simple as it is getting into your first project. The biggest challenge I find with new people in Pathways, unless they're younger and are used to university classes where they're already on the computer, it's a lot easier for them. But for those that aren't born of that generation, let's say, the biggest issue that people have is what I call buttonology. It's navigating through Pathways. So this is the opening screen you'll have on every project, and you click on begin, and every project gives you this introduction. So this box here that's grayed is supposed to be your computer screen. So it tells you what each of the buttons are in relation to what you're going to use. These buttons here on the left and the right side are the actual buttons that work. If you want to go forward or backward, advance to the page or return, these ones outside of that grade screen are the actual live ones. Notice I go over it, it turns blue. Inside, they don't change. That's a quick way of telling you which ones are live and which ones are not. So you'd simply have your new member go through and get used to it. I like the way that they put Pathways together because it has fantastic videos and explanations for the members to go through. And as long as they understand what I call the buttonology, whereby what to click and when, then it becomes relatively simple. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, any questions so far? And because I've done several icebreakers like most of you have, I'm just going to click through. But it does tell you all about your projects. Now this is an interesting screen here. Anytime you have this split screen with this blue box that says directions, you have to read this down here, and it tells you, or gives you instructions for what the top screen is. So it's telling you how you can view and print your project resources and checklists, which if you notice here is a project checklist. You just highlight it, opens up, and you can print it. It's not overly complicated. So eventually what happens is the person's going to go through, and here's another one of these screens, and they're going to assess themselves prior to giving a speech. And this is in every project. And I know that this drives some people nuts on live, and I read them on the forums, but I actually like that it's here because the assess your skills before your speech and then the assess your skills after your speech, to me, it's a measuring stick of what me as an individual learned doing this project. It's not about pathways, it's what I learned doing this project. So as long as you teach your new people that this is what it is, then it's fine. Any questions on that? And then the rest of this is just showing them what their competencies are. Everybody knows that Pathways is built on 5 competencies. 11 projects, 5 competencies: self-confidence, public speaking, communication and leadership. And I can't remember what the other ones are, but off the top of my head. But they're in every path is based on competencies, and some are more heavily weighted than other paths. For example, the engaging humor is confidence and public speaking, number 1 and 5. Every path has confidence in public speaking. It's when the leadership ones start coming up, it's a different weighting for different paths. And going through and reading what they are will help you to determine what path you want. And that was going over the last one, determining what path you want. That's what Lloyd did the last session. All right, so as I said, they would go through all of this and read it, and it tells them how to prepare, what they need to do at the club level in order to give the speech. And then after their speech, they do an assessment again, evaluating themselves. And then when they're done, they get to this screen, they review and and apply the skills they learned. And once all the assessments are done and they click on this, it'll say, congratulations, you have finished this level or this project. Does that make sense? Any questions? Anyone? All right, let me move this here. All right. So I'm going to do it just completing my assignment, my evaluation, of course, my skills after, like I said. And I'm going to skip right past this, and it says, congratulations, I've completed my project. Right? Well, I can actually close out of here now. And when I go back, it says I'm in progress. Because I did not complete the evaluations of myself, it's not going to mark it as complete. And that's essentially how you move through your project. And you can go to any level you want now. If I like going through here, I can look at all of my elective speeches in a path. I can actually activate them and look through and see what they're all about, read the introductions to them all, and choose, much like a manual, which electives I want. In this particular path of innovative planning, I have the one mandatory and the one elective that I must complete. This is the mandatory one right here, manage projects successfully, and I choose the one elective. Does that make sense? Once you get past level 3, I believe you have elective, or pardon me, level 2, you have electives on all the other levels. And you can go through and just choose which one and then apply your knowledge that way. And that's about all there is to getting onto your project and going through it. Any questions on that?
How do you put your speeches in with your dates? Dates completed.
Okay. When you actually complete it,
Mm-hmm.
it time stamps it. And let me think of how I need to get into there to see that again. It's been a while. So I'm going to go back to my home screen here and reopen this. Right. So here's my icebreaker from Engaging Humor. If I look at the training details instead of opening it up, I can actually see everything about it here, that it's completed. Took me 17 minutes to do it on the 26th of September 2019. Is that what you're looking for, June? What else?
Yeah, but you haven't said when you did it. How come it automatically shows the time, the date?
Because that's when the day that I complete the speech, it's a little bit misleading because I can complete the speech and then go into pathways and then complete it on pathways, and it actually uses the date that I completed it in pathways. On your evaluation form, when somebody evaluates you, they should be putting the date in there, and that would be the date that I would use, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
You've seen what those evaluation sheets look like?
I do.
Okay.
I have one right here.
Yes. So that would be the more accurate date because that's when you actually gave the speech. In here is when you actually just completed it, the project online. And that may not happen the same date. Well, welcome to everyone else that joined. I didn't see who else had joined while I was going through my session. But are there any other questions?
David, could you go over the evaluation and feedback one? And the reason I ask is I had someone ask me today, or yesterday actually, do I have to do 2 different speeches or do the icebreaker and the research work towards this thing?
All right. All right, your icebreaker is its own speech, the same as the first project out of the Competent Communicator Manual was in the legacy path. This next set is actually 3 projects. You see the first speech, a second speech, and then the evaluator resource for a third speech. Now, your first speech can be on any topic, 5 to 7 minutes. It is not the icebreaker speech, which is 4 to 6 minutes. It's a separate speech altogether. Now, the purpose of this first speech is for you to get feedback from your evaluator and to apply it to your next speech. So if they say try to use less notes, then you would try to incorporate less notes into your second speech. And I like to make sure that I bring my evaluation from my first one so I can remember what those are, and I write it down on the evaluation form for my evaluator so that they know what they're looking for. Just a little tip. And your second speech can be the same as your first speech, or it can be a totally different speech altogether, again, on any subject. The goal here is to incorporate the feedback that your evaluator gave you from the first speech. Does that make sense? The third project is where you evaluate somebody else's speech. And this would be the first time in the club that you're actually evaluating a speech formally. And there are some excellent tutorials within this project on feedback and how to give evaluations. So make sure that your members are looking at those videos. And the evaluator resource here, how it works is, let's say that Tekla is giving a speech. She is going to give me, that person going through this project, her evaluation form as per normal. And I'm going to use that to evaluate her. Someone else in the club is going to take this evaluation and feedback evaluator speech, and they're going to evaluate my evaluation and give me feedback on how well I did as my first time evaluating. Does that make sense? That's the third project. Giving an evaluation, but the evaluation form goes to somebody else to evaluate your evaluation. A little confusing, but not really once you get used to it. Does that make sense? Lloyd, does that explain it fairly well for you?
Yes, it does, David. That evaluator sheet there, you got a question. Was there any criteria on who should be evaluating you as an evaluator?
I would say that probably someone who's had a little practice evaluating so they can give you accurate and good feedback, being your first time as an evaluator. We actually did this in our club last night in Selkirk. I had one of my new members evaluate Laurette Greenlay, who gave a speech.
Oh, wow.
And I gave the member, one of my members, her feedback on how well she did on her evaluation. So it works quite well.
Yeah, thanks, David. It's choice. I may as well chime in and chat instead of texting.
No worries.
In terms of the evaluator, do you select who you want to evaluate you?
Good.
For
You
this
mean
project? Or is
you
that
can.
assigned by the VP of Ed?
It can be either. For example, the member who evaluated Laurette last night is my mentee, my protege in the club. So we have now, we're going through the Pathways mentoring program where I'm her mentor and she's my mentee. So she likes it when I evaluate her because it reinforces some of the other things we're talking about. And once we finish the mentor-mentee, then I told her that in speeches going forward, she can have anybody who can do evaluations evaluate her, because it's good to get different points of view on evaluations instead of always just mine.
Yeah, thank you. I know in the old education program, in the manual, there was, I don't think it was just our club, but there was sort of a role, the competent evaluator or something. So, or even the, so whenever that came up, there was an assigned person to do that. Now that's not as clear in the Pathways.
No, it's
so
not.
people are like, well, what do I do here? You know, so I was just looking for some guidelines on what we can share with people.
In my club, I've got 4 DTMs out of 17 members. For the very first one, a lot of times I'll pick one of the DTMs because they've done it so many times that they're actually looking at concrete things to give the evaluator, because that speech isn't about their eye contact and their voice variation. That speech is about the quality of the evaluation that they're giving to the member. Does that make sense? The content, right? Are they actually picking up good things that the person did well? Are they actually picking up areas of improvement? And are they actually picking up the points that they can, moving forward, that they can grow on?
Yeah, selecting someone who's a good evaluator would be excellent idea.
Correct. And every club has them. You know who they are.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad thing. And as you're mentoring other people to get to that same point, you can start picking them. And that's something that the VPE should be able to help with very, very easily. But that's
and
a
the,
club's
and the
choice.
form they fill out for
Yes.
you, there's no requirement to hand it in to anyone as evidence or upload it, or I know you could, I guess, but
You could.
But
I like
yeah.
Lloyd's idea of a box. But what I do is, for example, last night, Anna gave her evaluation to the speaker, which was Lorette. And I took that 2 to 3 minute evaluate form that I did on Anna, and I gave it to Anna.
Yes.
So that Anna can keep it.
Yeah.
Because she can read it and use that for future evaluations as she's growing and developing as an evaluator. Good question.
David, you do have a question in your chat. It's from Joyce. It says, what does the view time mean?
Oh, the view time, okay.
And that was from your other sheet where you showed us your, and
yes.
It had been viewed twice, I think, and it had 17 minutes beside it. I guess that's the question.
That's how long
Oh,
I spent inside the project.
Okay.
In Pathways from start to finish.
Okay, good.
Right? Well, for example, this is my third path that I'm in, so it's not going to take me long to go through the icebreaker one.
Right.
Right? Because I already know what they want me to do, because the icebreaker in level 1 is the same across all 11 paths. Basically, level 1 is the same across all 11 paths.
Okay.
Level 2, there are slight variations depending on the path. And then from level 3 on, it's an open ball field.
And when you showed us how to find the sort of the date stamp of the fact that a speech has been completed,
yep,
that's really only when you go and say I'm done. So if you do the speech one day and you don't get back to Pathways for 4 days to mark you're done, then it's 4 days later that it shows the speech was completed.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And can you see all
yes.
of that? Or, all right.
Yes.
So that's what I had said earlier. If you're going to be tracking when you gave speeches, your VPE will have hopefully a manual checklist that they're checking off that says, you know, Joyce did her speech this night for this project, or whatever the case may be, the same as we had the old way. You're absolutely right. 1 is the actual time I did my project on this date. That's actually going to be on your evaluation form. And this here is when you completed it in Pathways. So you're right. There could be 5 days difference. In some members, it could be a month's difference. Right? I find that a lot of times when members are doing speeches, I'm having to remind them to go into Pathways and complete it and move on to the next one.
Yes. And in the old program at the back of the book where you would list the date you had the speech and the title of the speech, and it was all on one page.
Correct.
There is nothing like that here.
No.
Consolidated and especially the title of the speech as well.
Right. So when you complete a level, it still goes to your, I believe it does, unless they've just changed it recently, but say you complete level 1. Your base camp manager should still get something saying you've completed level 1, yes. And then they would verify it and say, click, yes, completed level 1. The difference between now and when Pathways first rolled out is you could not originally go to level 2 until your base camp manager approved that. They've removed that stipulation now that you can go right into it, and it's just for the base camp manager to be able to track that you've done that.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Now, David, this is June. David, I've completed level 1 in Pathways. And
Yes.
somehow I have not recorded anything online. And I keep going in circles, I'm not getting where I can.
All right. So on here,
Mm.
did you actually get to this point of level 1 completion and you went down here and you launched that and you read the screen, and then it'll say status pending, what is it, pending approval from the Basecamp manager, right? They approve it. Once the Basecamp manager approves it, it'll show up.
Okay, I've done the icebreaker, I've done evaluation, I've done the research.
Yep.
So then level 1 completed. So then when I go in, but I haven't registered all this online. Aren't you supposed to go in each time?
Yes. Yes. So when you complete your icebreaker, you actually go through and complete each screen until it says, congratulations, you have completed this project. Then it'll show as being complete in the computer in Pathways.
Oh, okay. So it will automatically show.
Yes. The only, does that make sense? So you've actually, and if it doesn't, then you've missed a screen. Just go back and make sure that you've opened every screen, and it should do it. And if it doesn't, call a friend like me and I'll talk you through it.
Okay. Okay, so that, okay, level 1 completion. Okay. So level 1 completion, engage in humor. You have to give a speech in humor?
Not for that particular one. That's just to complete the level 1.
Oh, okay.
Level 1 just consists of the icebreaker, the 2 speeches, and the evaluation and feedback, and the 1 researching and presenting speech. That's it. There's 5 projects in level 1. In all of them. All 11 paths have the same 5 projects.
Okay. Now for each session, do you have to go, you have to have that self-evaluation first?
Yes.
Okay.
That is part of it. And like I say, it is a self-evaluation. It's not an evaluation on how well you like Pathways. It's
no.
how you felt about your skills about that project before the speech, and then after you gave the speech, if it's changed or not, how you felt about your skills.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, any other questions?
I have a question, David, about the electives.
Yes.
In the legacy program,
yes,
we elected to do certain manuals.
Correct.
And once we had done them, we could not repeat them until we had reached DTM and we're starting on a new DTM. Is that the same with the electives here? Once you've done an elective, you can't do it again and try to improve it and do it differently?
Well,
you need to pick a new one?
Yes and no. I'm going to say no. I mean, you can give a speech twice. You just can't complete it in Pathways twice. You know what I mean?
Okay, well, that answers my question. You can't claim it twice just because, okay.
Correct. Now, there's nothing saying that I complete all 5 levels of this path that I'm working on here, which is visionary communication.
Yeah.
And then 2 years down the road, I pay for that path again and I do different electives. Nothing saying I can't do that. You can. Tekla, you have anything to add in there?
Now, if you are on 2 different paths, and you have the same elective in 2 different paths, say let's say lessons learned, like we see on here, is an elective. If you did it in visionary communication, you can also do it in another path, but you have to redo it again in that second path.
Yes, I see where you're going with that. So you do it once for this path and it counts for visionary communications. And then say it's in dynamic leadership, you can do that same elective in there if you want to improve upon it.
Exactly.
And then that only counts within your dynamic leadership path.
Exactly.
Yes, good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, but within that one project, you can only do one. And you can do all the electives if you want, but your minimum, it says minimum required is 1. That's all you need to do.
I guess I'm confused again. I thought I had it, but no, I don't. But if you have, if you choose one elective,
Yes.
let's have a name of an elective. I don't know what it might be.
All right.
Are all these things listed? Are they all electives?
Yes.
These are all level 5 electives in visionary communications. Yeah.
Okay, supposing we take lessons learned then. If I do it in presentation mastery
Yes.
and complete it,
Yes.
but still feel that I'd like to do this again for my own experience, can I do it again differently in engaging humor?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, then that has answered my question differently. Thank you very much.
Right? Because they belong to separate paths. You're claiming them in the path that
Yeah.
you're doing the project in.
That's
So
right.
Understood. Thank you. Now,
perfect. So I would like to thank you for being with us this evening to go through this portion of Pathways training.